Hey there, comic friends, I'm Travis, and this is another edition of No Cakes, where I talk about comic books that don't have to do with superheroes and or Ethan either doesn't read them or doesn't review them along with me. Okay, right off the bat, I'm going to talk about Fatale, issue number 12. Great one-shot issue. Doesn't have to do with our main character throughout the rest of these issues, Josephine, in a sense that she's not in the comic. But the female character who is in this issue is obviously a lot like Josephine, if not basically the same critter. And we get to find out what level her immortality is, which is pretty interesting, and what fatal thing might be out there awaiting Josephine that Josephine is running from, and obviously why she's running from it. When she seems so capable most of the other time when she's doing stuff. So very, very interesting, excellent, of course, artwork on one. I'm really glad that Ed Brubaker decided to open this story up and do more with it. Tell us more stories. I think there's it seems to be pretty obvious from these one shots we've been getting that he has a lot more to say. The next issue, I think, is set in the Old West, which I'm assuming isn't Josephine either, because I don't think Josephine's that old. I think Josephine, we've seen, she's from like the 20s or 30s going forward. So, yeah, so really enjoying this. Whereas, as I've said before, for me it started out kind of slow. It doesn't always add the occult part of it that I wish was there. But still very good. I'm becoming more and more interested in this Josephine character, which may be bad for me, obviously, considering the fact Josephine's powers in this book. Excellent, excellent book, though. Okay, next I'm going to talk about The End Times of Bram and Ben, and this is issue number 2. Absolutely love this cover. This is the cover that basically made me decide, you know what, I should probably pick this up because that's just too cool looking, and then I had to scramble to get number 1. Of course, the artwork on the inside is not like it is here. It's got kind of a cartoon style, more art, which is fine. The first issue I was a bit iffy on. There's some parts in it that I'm not exactly sure what they were telling me, or if they were implying something that for some reason set me off into wondering about the book and the commentary on some of the stuff. I'm not a religious person really myself. But I don't want an insulting dig at one religion over another religion, I guess, and so I find that kind of stuff bothersome. And I wasn't sure if that was happening on the first issue. This issue, no, it doesn't. This issue actually was really funny. Last issue, I wasn't sure that I found it funny, but this one, definitely was. If you can look at heaven and hell and the players that are involved there with the same level of levity that the creators of this book do. It's a pretty fun read. It's a good laugh. Our kind of dopey, nerdy Angel has a second persona that is more traditional, and so does the devil that's in this. They're still lobbying to make Bram the Antichrist. He's running basically as a third party versus heaven and hell. Looks like it could be pretty amusing and pretty funny. So far it's been amusing. This is number 2 of 4. Kind of a funny read, nothing that knocks your socks off or is any great revelation or whatnot, but amusing, amusing all the same. Okay, next we're going to talk about Saucer Country number 12. We're 24 hours away from the election of the President of the United States. And it looks like there's relatively decent chances that our candidate is going to win. The professor in this has exposed himself as having little people that talk to him. He has admitted to the fact that little people talk to him. So our candidate is freaking out over the fact that the person that she's hired to be an expert on UFOs, to be the sane person, to give them some sort of idea of what's going on, they now think is totally delusional because he has 2 people who talk to him. These 2 people we find out that are talking to him, these little people that are talking to him all the time, these kind of invisible naked spirit ghosts, they're actually they're actually people who they are representatives of the figures that are engraved on the plates for the Voyager, and I can't remember the other, right off the top of my head, the other satellites that we have shot out into space and have in like 1973 and 74, who have reached the edge of the atmosphere and are drifting out farther into unexplored, unknown space that we don't know anything about. There was a male on one, a female on the other, and these two are those people, supposedly. They beam themselves back from those places and talk to him occasionally and stuff. By the end of this thing, the professor is pretty depressed about his predicament, his lack of belief, the fact that now that he has been exposed as being a crackpot or delusional, and the fact that he talks to little people, he's now worried that he's not going to get what he was hoping to get out of the whole helping this candidate, was if his candidate wins, that he's going to get the actual governmental facts on what's really out there, what's really being hidden, and what's going on. And his answer to that is pretty dire at the end of this issue. We also find out that the candidate that was for the same party that was running against our candidate, exposure of him believing in UFOs, his rendition of abduction is much different than everyone else's. It's reptilian aliens that have abducted him and whatnot. They're starting to wonder if his abduction was actually staged by somebody that's real and not an alien. So there's a lot still going on. It's going to be unfortunate that we won't get some of this loose ends tied up and whatnot. Curious to see if she actually wins and then what happens after that when she has that power of the presidency. Can't remember how many more issues are left of that, but still a fine read, really entertaining. And lastly, we're going to talk about Bedlam, and this is issue 4. We get a little more exposure to the first superhero that's in this in this book. We don't get a lot of exposure to him. He basically is the equivalent of the Hammer for the police department. They bring him in and use him to threaten criminals, and they turn a blind eye to the fact that he kind of smacks them around and hangs them off of things. He basically, Mr. Press here, they pretty much take him and rough him up really hard to try and get him to spill the beans on what's really going on, who his partner is, and all that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, while they're doing that, they actually do find out, they gather enough police information along with Mr. Price's steering them in the right direction that they discover or an idea of who the murderer is. They don't know exactly by name, but they know a group of people that were abused by some priest back in the past. They're just trying to have to figure out which one it is, because all these people that are on this list, all these people who have been murdered are young people that have been murdered are people who were witnesses and in a trial while they were still teenagers. At any rate, so this crazy nut in here that's the current murderer has wandered off into a hospital and with 2 assault rifles and is going to shoot up everybody that's there, and they send off the first to go and stop it being the superhero that he is. And Mr. Price is happy that they have come to that conclusion. Yeah, he doesn't seem surprised. The detective wants to know, well, why don't you seem surprised? Well, because I kind of knew all that. And she's like, well, why didn't you say anything? And he's like, well, I was already having problems getting you to believe me, and I knew if I brought up religion, you'd really think I was a crazy nutball, so I just didn't bring it up. So I'm really curious to see what their relationship's going to be now. They've decided that he isn't the murderer, or at least not the murderer of these people that are currently being murdered. So what's his working relationship going to be with them after this? It'll be really, really curious to see what that is. If they explore other... Excuse me for all the yawning I'm doing today in this thing. Good grief. But it'll be really curious to see what happens. Really great book. Love the art in it. Love the macabre, the twistedness of it. I was hoping we'd get to see more of the superhero, so I'm curious to see if we will in the next issue, just to see what that's like. I mean, I'm sure he is not really the big game player in this whole thing. Why they threw a superhero in, I'm not 100% sure, so I'm kind of curious as to why they thought they needed to have a superhero somewhere in this book. Because it isn't like really the superhero is the person that took down Matter Red back in the day. So yeah, really curious to see what it comes. Excellent book, really enjoying it. And I'm going to stop now because I keep yawning. Also, I just want to let everybody know I apologize for the poor lighting. I'm in my basement. I've been doing most of these things in my basement. Don't have the greatest lighting. The weather's starting to get better, so hopefully I'll be able to start doing them outside again where I get some natural light and the light's a little better out there. Normally, if you go back and look at the history of these things, lots of my no capes were done outside so you could actually see what, the comics a little better lighting and stuff. Anyway, that's it for now. Hope to have more for you down the road when I got more no capes to read. See ya.